It looks good, doesn't it? This is a Mercedes-AMG C63S. And normally, this is the part of the film where I tell you that its 4-liter twin-turbocharged V8 engine produces 503 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque. Except, this one doesn't. This particular C63S has been tuned by none other than Steve Dinan and his team over at Carbahn Autoworks. Now, that twin-turbocharged V8 engine produces 674 horsepower and 666 pound-feet of torque. Of course, it's so much more than the horsepower figures, as per usual. So let's hit the road and find out what this AMG is all about. This is going to be a review of both the Mercedes-AMG C63S as well as the work Steve Dinan and the guys over at Carbahn Autoworks have actually done to this vehicle, because I believe you kind of need to understand the whole package to really kind of get a feel for this car. First up, Mercedes-AMG C63S is the high-performance variant of the C-Class family sedan, or in this case, two-door coupe, since you can get it either way. It has a twin-turbocharged 4-liter V8 engine. It is rear-wheel drive. And obviously it goes up against the likes of the BMW M4s of the world. Now, by all measures, I think this is one of the best sports sedans you can buy out there. The sensation this car gives you, it feels very special, right? It also helps that V8 sounds pretty good. Touch on that more in a second, but I'm glad to see that the shift to turbocharged powertrains has not in any way dulled the typical AMG snarly, loud exhaust. So that's a basic primer on the C63S. Now I need to talk about Steve Dinan, because many of you may know him as the guy behind, well, Dinan. Well, it seems like Steve Dinan and his namesake brand have parted ways. I guess Steve wanted to kind of change directions, kind of wanted to pivot, and to do that, he has started Carbahn Autoworks out of Northern California. Now, this is a tuning shop that, for all intents and purposes, works on Mercedes-Benz, BMWs, Audis, and Porsche. So it makes sense that they have this C63S. Now, I think a distinction here is that many may know his former namesake brand, Dinan, as being a parts developer. They make their own parts. And with this new Carbahn Autoworks venture, Steve Dinan has taken a step back from development, and they're more of a typical tuning shop. So a lot of the parts in this vehicle are actually off-the-shelf parts, or parts they've contracted other brands to make for them. So Steve Dinan offers this car in a variety of packages. This particular package, quite fitting for a Mercedes-AMG product, he's dubbed it the GT-S package. It's kind of the middle, as it were. Interestingly, I've been told that Dinan will actually outfit this car to near GT4 spec race car, should you choose to do so. Now, if you don't remember, Steve Dinan got his start in the world of motorsports. He is the track day aficionado. He's a racer through and through. So it absolutely makes sense that he would, one, jump into the tuning market, and two, work his customers up into eventually race cars, if that's the route they want to go. But as it is, this GT-S spec costs, I'm looking at the cheat sheet now, $21,890 on top of the purchase price of this car. Wow. So it's a lot of cash, but you get a lot of car for the money. What exactly have they done to this car? I've mentioned the power figures, 674 horsepower and 666 pound-feet of torque. Throw up the horns for that one, but it's so much more than power. I will start with power because that's what you guys love. You love horsepower. And so I think this is interesting. What this car has is a set of upgraded turbos from Pure. These are a set of Pure Stage 1 turbos, along with custom carbon fiber air intakes and upgraded heat exchangers, as well as a custom ECU tune for the best drivability, according to Mr. Dinan. That's what gives you the power figures. Interestingly, they've chosen to retain the stock AMG exhaust, which you can hear. Quite nice for a factory effort exhaust. Though I have to say, with how crazy this car is in terms of performance potential, I wish it was a little bit louder. Ooh, it's quick. It's definitely quick. Wow. This engine, I should say this whole powertrain package is frankly amazing. This motor is what is referred to as a hot V, which means the turbochargers actually are nestled inside the cylinder banks. Now basically that, in theory, improves efficiency in response to those turbochargers. Okay, now we talked about horsepower, we can talk about suspension and handling, my favorite things. Because Steve Dinan, being a racer, he gets it. He knows you have all the power in the world. If you can't put it down to the ground, it doesn't matter. So what suspension upgrades does this car have? Well, I think crucially, if you look at it, it looks like it's slammed to the ground. This car has adjustable suspension. So what they do is they actually convert the factory adjustable shocks to a coilover style suspension. So the suspension sits between half an inch to an inch lower than stock, and the spring rates are slightly stiffer than stock, though they are tuned to work with these factory dampers, which are very, very good. Additionally, Dinan, being a racer, he knows about suspension bushing. It's really the biggest thing you can do to a car. So in this particular car, they basically replace all the suspension bushings on the control arms and stuff like that with spherical bearings. Now those spherical bearings, they sound like something small on paper. If you're not used to the change, if you never experienced it before, you may not understand, but it plays a huge, huge role in the way this car drives, because basically it means the suspension has very little in the way of irregularities or binds. When you hit a bump, it's nice and smooth. Those spherical bearings basically allow the suspension to work perfectly as intended throughout the entire travel. So despite being a little bit stiffer than stock, it actually rides better and handles the bumps better than a stock car would. Additionally, this car has camber adjustment front and rear to optimize the alignment. I've been told that the front of this car runs about -2 degrees of camber up front, and the back's about the same. That kind of improves your tire's contact patch when you're on the road, especially when you're cornering really hard. Now, all these suspension upgrades would be squandered if they didn't put good rubber on this car, but man, they really put some good rubber on this car. This car rolls on optional Forgeline wheels, 20 inches in diameter, 9.5 inches wide in the front, 10.5 inches wide out back, and that allows them to put some very wide rubber on those wheels. Specifically, Michelin Sport Cup 2 competition rubber, DOT legal, but very, very sticky. 285 section width fronts, 305 section width out back. It's absolute steamroller tires, especially compared to what this car rolls on stock. Now, I'm not necessarily sure about the 20s. I think 19s would be visually better, but that's a personal thing. But the efficacy cannot be denied. Now, this is a big, heavy car. Mercedes claims that the C63S coupe weighs just under 4,100 pounds. It's big and heavy. But when you add that much wheel and tire and that much mechanical grip into it, it just works. and the big front tires means this car has great turn-in response. It feels like it can hang on forever. And it's a good thing this car seems to have never-ending grip, because putting down that much power to the ground is tricky, especially in a rear-wheel drive car. Speaking of the overall package, one thing the guys at Carbahn didn't touch are the brakes. Though, if you look at this car, it already has massive brakes from the factory. 2-piece rotors up front, massive 6-piston calipers. I mean, they're absolutely enormous. I don't think you can even get a wheel smaller than 19 inches over those brakes. It really seems like the only thing you'd ever need for this car, if you want to go upgrade your brakes, is the requisite pads and fluid upgrade, maybe if you're going to go to a track day. Man, I'm shocked by how good the suspension tuning on this car is. I mean, the mix between those spherical bearings, allowing for perfect suspension travel and articulation, combined with these factory AMG shocks, which are very, very good, and the slightly stiffer lower springs. This car's a weapon. With all this tire grip too, you can't beat it. You just can't. People don't know that, but these roads out here in Southern California, they're pretty awful. A lot of people think, you know, stiff slam suspension is the way to go to make your car handle. Not out here, it's not. You need decent suspension travel, good shocks, and really good tires if you want to try and haul ass in the canyons out here. But man, oh wow! Look at that. These big dips and undulations in the pavement. It just hooked up. You can be full throttle through them, and it's just putting power down to the rear wheels, no problem. No hop, skip, or bump. This is one of those cars that you end up driving way faster than you really should, or that you really even think you are, because it's so confidence inspiring that you don't fear getting right up to the limit. You don't fear pushing through that next corner 5 miles an hour faster than you would in other cars. So let's talk about some inherent C63 isms. I have to say, I love this interior for the most part. I think the design of this interior is fabulous. I think these sport bucket seats are supremely comfortable and look really cool. I like their instrumentation. I like this Alcantara and leather steering wheel. I like this carbon fiber interior trim, even though I'm not sure if it's real. I like the leather wrapped dashboard, and I like the Burmeister audio system. This cabin feels very expensive. I think Mercedes has done an excellent job there with that. The new C-Class in general just feels very upscale. So while I love the interior on this car, I think the materials look fabulous. The quality feels very nice. It's a very enjoyable place to just spend time. My biggest gripe is definitely the infotainment system. Now, Mercedes Command, the system they use, is clunky, it's kind of busy. There's a lot of menus and sub-menus, and it doesn't seem to have that sort of get in and go intuitiveness you might be used to with, for say, BMW's iDrive system, for example. Though I will say the screen is very pretty to look at. Now again, on more of a general C63-ism, after experiencing this car and a contemporary BMW M4 back-to-back, I have to say I really don't know why you'd buy an M4 unless you're just a die-hard manual transmission person, because it seems like in almost every way this Mercedes is just a much nicer car, a better place to spend time. The engine sounds a lot better. The interior is way nicer. I mean, shoot, considering the BMW M4 is the main competition for this car, it's kind of blowing it out of the water right now. Speaking of BMW M4s, I think it's quite interesting, having driven a Dinan-tuned M4 last year and this new Steve Dinan / Carbahn Autoworks tuned C63S this year. Now that car, if you recall watching that video, produced 550 horsepower from its twin-turbocharged inline 6-cylinder engine. So right away, the Benz, although it's a bit heavier, has a very notable power advantage. Additionally, I think the theory behind the suspension tuning on the two cars is quite similar. It's kind of interesting to see what the actual result is when you're actually behind the wheel. Both have comparable amounts of mechanical grip thanks to similarly sized rubber. With the Benz being a bit heavier, you suspect it may trail the M4 in terms of ultimate grip. I think the distinction is the inherent chassis differences. This Benz, I believe, is double wishbone suspension, the BMW's McPherson struts up front. And so as a result, it seems to be a bit more friendly to drive. A little bit less dicey, a little bit less edgy, and surprisingly, despite having a lot more power, better able to put its power down to the ground. So I think that's about all I've got here for the Steve Dinan Carbahn Autoworks Mercedes-AMG C63S. Very long name. I implore you to go check out Carbahn Autoworks, because if this car is any indication of what they're up to, it's definitely good things. So, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye. Well, I think that's all I've got for the Steve Dinan Carbahn Autoworks Mercedes-AMG C63S. After driving this vehicle, I implore you to go check out Carbahn Autoworks. I can't even speak. Wow, sorry, it's tough to speak when you're driving this thing. Well, sorry I'm not talking right now. I'm actually chasing down an SRT8 Chrysler 300 who is trying very hard to shake me and not doing a very good job of it. Oh, you can hear those screeching tires. He's trying. I have more power than you. I have more tire than you. I have more grip than you.